I have a feeling some of you can help me out with this. Blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots and ruined your black tie affair. The last one to know, the last one to show, I was the last one you thought you'd see there. And I saw the surprise and the fear in your eyes when I took his glass of champagne. And I toasted you, said, honey, we may be through, but you'll never hear me complain, 'cause I've got friends in low places where the whiskey drowns and the beer chases my blues away. And I'll be okay. I'm not big on social graces. Think I'll slip on down to the oasis. Oh, I got friends in low places. This well-known Garth Brooks song is full of meanings. Obviously, it's a bit of an angry statement about one man's ability to survive the breakup of a relationship. He can do so, the song says, because he has friends who hang out with him in places where the blues can be shared and eventually drowned. But this song is also a critique of what is perceived by the singer as a highfalutin approach to living. He thinks that he and his girlfriend didn't mesh because they had very different lifestyles. She's attending a black tie affair where champagne is shared. He, because of his roots, shows up in boots and turns and ruins this black tie affair. He's got friends in low places. Low places. That's where the Bible is taking us today. And we do start in highfalutin places, by the way. Proverbs takes us to the king's court, to the place of highest honor, where we are told we are not to put ourselves forward in the king's presence or stand in the place of the great, for it is better to be told, come up here, than to be put lower in the place of a noble. In other words, know your place. Now, Proverbs includes many snippets of wisdom for young men who are growing up in the king's court, we'd call it the political sphere, and who are being trained to live within that sphere. It's better for you, Proverbs is saying, to not assert yourself when you're with the rich and the famous. Wait until they invite you to the place of honor. And don't take that place by storm. Receive it by invitation. It's better to start low and end up high than to start high and end up low. The latter brings you shame, something in biblical days you do not want. Biblical times were shame and dishonor cultures. Now, I have to be honest with you, I don't know what I think of this advice. On the one hand, it sounds somewhat noble. Humility always seems like a good move. But on the other hand, it can be interpreted in a very manipulative way, and people do that kind of manipulation all the time. I've seen it. I've seen it in my family. They act like such the humble ones. Oh, I'm humble. And then you know what? You respond by giving them loads of attention. Their humility really isn't humility. It's a way of getting what they want. Honor, attention from you. So maybe sometimes starting low isn't as noble as it seems. What's more, I don't know what I think of living in a world in which lowness and highness are so precisely described. As I have shared with you in my sermon, one of my sermons before, I only have so many stories, you know. I got in trouble in seminary because I sat in the place that belonged to one of my professors. And he thought that was his place. And he made it quite clear that I needed to move out of his place. And I was convinced that I wasn't going to move. Really, buddy, you think you're much better than I and you deserve the higher place? I come from the Midwest. I come from Cincinnati, where we don't take that highfalutin stuff very well. You think you're so important that you get a special place. Forget that. I don't know if I like this higher stuff and lower stuff. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. Well, I'm a 21st century American. The Bible, believe it or not, I know this is hard for many to believe, but is not shaped by 21st century American values. The Bible, as I said before, is preoccupied with shame, honor, and place. And today, it's taking us to the lower place. And Jesus takes us to that place too on a Sabbath. And by the way, the neon light ought to be shining when you hear that. On a Sabbath. When they say that, you know something really big is going to happen. On a Sabbath, Jesus is eating at the house of the leader of the Pharisees. I suspect, don't know this for sure, but that this particular gathering was probably a black tie affair. The leader of the Pharisees probably had invited some friends to meet the newest celebrity in town, a man from Nazareth who had gained much notoriety as a preacher and a teacher and a healer. All the guests there probably had heard of Jesus, but they were not the type to show up for a mass gathering. After dinner, the host asked Jesus, as would be a common in the case, "You got anything to say?" I shouldn't ask Jesus that. And he says, "Well, yeah, I do. I've been watching all of you, how you came into the party and battled to get to the front of the line near the place of honor. Let me give you a little sage advice. Don't grab the place of honor when you arrive at the party in case somebody more important than you, like, I don't know, Queen Elizabeth or Barack Obama shows up, and then you would have to make room for them. You would be embarrassed. It would be tacky. It would be a matter of shame." Now, you're right if you say Jesus is sounding a lot like Proverbs here, but it's clear that what he is about is not necessarily giving you a sneaky means to climb the ladder. Look humble. You know, people do this sometimes. I'll look humble, and then they'll say, "Yo, let's put you up higher. We'll promote you because you're acting so humble." I think when we look at what Jesus says next, we realize he's offering something much more radical. He says to Mr. Head Pharisee, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors in case they might invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you." What? What kind of advice is that? And what kind of party is that? One of the reasons you invite other people to your party, I know this, my wife and I host a lot of parties. One of the reasons we invite other people to the party is the relationship that develops and what occurs because of the relationship and the invitation. They may invite you back. That's the way life works. The official ones among us, the more highfalutin, call it reciprocity. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And truthfully, it's not always that cynical. There's something very good about networks that are built. Something very good. I often say to people around here, some of you I know, you invest in people, they will invest in you. And the investment produces results. Jesus, you're downright weird. Your words are absurd. Yes, that's true. In the world of Jesus, by the way, the Gospels call that world the kingdom or reign of God, life is not about reciprocity. If it were, Jesus would not suggest that you invite the poor, the lame, and the blind. Why? They can't invite you back. They don't have the means to do so. John Petty says, embracing the poor is of no social use or utility. The folks in low places often don't provide you status or great gifts. But for Jesus, that is the point. Life is not a matter of status, not a matter of tit for tat, this for that, invitation for invitation, present for present. You know, she spent $75 on a present for me. We probably ought to spend at least $75 on a present for her. I often got in trouble with my mom because she'd get mad with her grandkids because they wouldn't write a thank you note. And I'd say, Mom, that's tacky. They should write you a thank you note. My mom was always very, very generous. They should write you a thank you note. But I'd say to her, if you want a thank you note, don't give. This is the kind of giving that Jesus is calling us to. We could call it gratuitousness. It's the kind of giving you give just because you can give without a need for a gift back. Now, I know this very well, we all have something at stake in relationships. And I realize that none of us gets beyond self-interest. And I don't think we necessarily need to. Relationships give us things. And it is not helpful to pretend that we don't matter. Oh, just walk all over me. It's not helpful to give people permission to take advantage of you. Get over that. But life lived fully into the way of Jesus entails learning to give freely without the need for reciprocity, without the need for return. So, include folks in your gatherings who cannot invite you back. Include the folks who often don't get the invitations. Include the awkward, the odd, the disagreeable, the lonely, the unpartnered, the left out. Your blessing will come, but not because they can repay you, but because they can't. Your blessing will come, Jesus says, from a deeper source. He calls it the resurrection of the righteous. That is to say to me, it will come from the gift of God. And people who give without calculation know the power of that gift. They know the power of just giving and not having to receive in return. And the power to live in that way will help you to operate in life differently. It will help you to live without the scorecard, to live not preoccupied with the ascent, climbing the ladder, but rather with the descent. This gift will free you to be like Jesus, who, if we trust the Bible, hung out with people in low places. I love what Brian McLaren said in the devotion this past week. He says this: the Spirit leads us downward to the bottom, to the place of humility, to the position and posture of service. That's where the Spirit, like water, flows. If you listen to the Spirit, McLaren says, this is what will happen to you. You'll be at a party, and you'll notice on one side of the room all the beautiful people laughing and having fun together. In a far corner, you'll notice a person who is alone, feeling awkward, not knowing anyone. The Spirit will draw you to that person in need. You indeed may become the bridge that connects the outsider to the insider, and in that connection, both, and I believe this strongly, will be better off. If you listen to the Spirit, here is what will happen to you. It will be late. You will be tired. There will be dishes to do, or clothes to pick up, or trash to empty, and somebody else should have done this, you will think, in great anger. Been there, done that. You will rehearse in your mind the speech that you will give them. Been there and done that. And then you will think, but I guess they're just as tired and overworked as I am, so maybe I can help. You won't do this, by the way, as a manipulative ploy, but as a simple act of service. There's a country in great need or a social problem that few people notice. If you listen to the Spirit, you will be drawn toward an opportunity to serve. At first, that thought will repel you or frighten you, but when you let the Spirit guide you, it will be a source of great joy, one of the richest blessings of your life. I love what McLaren says. The Spirit leads us downward to the bottom, to the place of humility, to the posture and position of service. Life in the world with God, the God met in Jesus, who, by the way, is on his way to the cross, is not about ascent, it's about descent. And by the way, that sounds hard, but if we ever got that, we might actually enjoy life a whole lot more, because you know what? Climbing ladders is really hard work. A lot of pressure is placed on the heart when you are constantly climbing. And I have to say this too, life as ascent often means that you have to do a lot of pretending. There's an old country music piece of advice that suggests that you shouldn't get above your raisin. Now, personally, I think there's some limits to that advice. But the constant move upward can cause you to forget who you really are. It can cause you not to tell the truth about your ordinariness, your brokenness, your being just like everybody else. And soon, you become pretty phony. And phoniness is really hard on the heart. Low places. That's where we're invited. The Spirit of Jesus leads us downward.